A viral social media post revealed a wedding planning scandal that stretches from Tulsa to Florida.
Wedding vendors say one woman planned but didn't pay for her own weddings. And yes, we said weddings because there were more than one.
And Fox 23's weekend anchor Rick Marinon found out even though the weddings didn't take place, wedding vendors are still stuck with the bills. It's his Fox 23 investigation, Till Debt Do Us Part.
Before you ever say I do, you first say I will when it comes to paying for your big day. But I'm told a woman planned her wedding multiple times, then ran from the bills and the ceremonies.
This was supposed to be like the wedding of the year. Pinterest worthy, like the most elaborate wedding that you could ever think of. Everything was perfect, everything was bougie, everything was over the top. But that's how Morgan's always been.
Bailey Money is a photographer in Nebraska. When her childhood best friend Morgan Newby asked to take photos for her wedding, she didn't hesitate.
I was not about to just back out cold turkey of my childhood best friend's amazing elaborate wedding less than a month to. I was doing all that I could, giving her every kind of opportunity that I could.
Bailey says because they were friends, she was more lenient when it came to payment. When her costs started to pile up, she asked Morgan for a deposit. Bailey says that's when the excuses started.
I like to give benefit of the doubt. I like to see the good in people. I don't do that anymore, obviously.
As the wedding date got closer, Morgan moved the location from Tulsa to Key West, Florida. Bailey says Morgan promised to reimburse her for everything there.
I show up and they look at me like, we don't have a reservation for you. We have nothing under your name. We have nothing under Morgan's name.
She reached out and waited to hear from her childhood best friend, but nothing. Bailey took to social media only to discover she wasn't alone. Other Tulsa wedding vendors read Bailey's story and said Morgan had also contacted them about a big wedding. Some had also not been paid.
I just know through the vendor circle in Tulsa of how she had jumped around to different people and stuff like that, but I didn't know how big it got.
Josephine Walden owns Just Catering by Orr in Tulsa. She says Morgan reached out to her twice for 2 weddings. One was supposed to be with one guy in the spring, then Morgan reached out again in the summer about a different wedding with someone else.
It's crazy. It's so crazy. But to do it without getting money transpired is really crazy to me in general, because in our industry, normally nobody does anything until they're paid in full before their wedding. And when she tried to pay us, it bounced.
Josephine pulled out her Morgan file and showed me the hours she spent dealing with her.
We emailed her again and said, hey, your payment bounced. So she said her mom was going to pay it, and then she still kept going to get an astronomical quote for 80 people, and was like, I'll pay for it, whatever. I'm like, yeah, I don't think this is really going to happen. And then it was like crickets.
Across town at Silk Aesthetic lash artist Stephanie Worley says Morgan gave what she thought was a credit card for a deposit. When Morgan failed to show up, Stephanie charged the card a cancellation fee, and it was declined.
If I were to have booked other clients in that time frame, I would have made more money off of them. So last minute cancellations really suck, especially when, I have 3 babies at home. Time is money, and you're messing with my kids.
Stephanie says she didn't realize until she saw Bailey's post that she too was being dragged into the wedding that was never going to happen.
I was in shock to see that I was not the only person.
She says Morgan gave her a sad story.
Hey, I'm so sorry. My house got broken into last night. I'm on the way to the ER. There's blood everywhere. This whole huge story. It was like, how can I not believe it?
Multiple business owners tell me they helped Morgan plan a wedding that would be the talk of Tulsa. Some said they received hot checks from her. One told me after multiple bounced checks, her business now faces hundreds of dollars in bank fees. So by now you're probably wondering, why hasn't anyone called the police? I'm told it's really not a crime to waste anyone's time, but when it comes to the bounced checks and the declined cards and the overdue bills, it's a civil matter for the most part, but also phone numbers have been disconnected. Social media was deactivated. Emails have either not been returned or have bounced back, and in some cases, some people didn't even get Morgan's address. Some vendors believe Morgan was planning multiple weddings for August 18th because she was booking multiple florists, DJs, and even entire venues for the same date. But it wasn't just one wedding here in Tulsa that was being planned for that mid-August date. There were also plans to have another wedding with the same crowd of people in Key West.
She wanted to get a contract because the following weekend is when she wanted to be here.
Lindsay Panera with El May Events worked on the supposed Key West wedding. She says Morgan called her looking to quickly elope on August 18th. Lindsay says Morgan signed a contract authorizing her to make purchases to quickly get ready for the big day. She spent more than $4,000 on items like cake and rare flowers.
People come from all over to Key West, to Key Largo, to Isla Mirada to get married, and often it's kind of like they would in Vegas. They just kind of show up and they go, "We're going to do it." And so no, it didn't, seem abnormal.
Lindsay says the day before the wedding, someone did show up in Key West. It was Bailey, who had flown in to photograph Morgan's wedding. The two quickly realized Morgan wasn't coming. The two women were left standing on a beach, feeling scammed.
It just went wild. And then all of a sudden I got a text from Morgan after calling and calling, saying, "Hey, we're not coming. We're not getting on the plane. I don't know if my relationship's intact anymore. Just send me an email, send me a bill, and I'll make sure to get right with you." And I said, "Well, I have sent you the bill, and you have signed it, and you do have it." And then she just completely ghosted me.
I tracked Morgan to her parents' house in Oklahoma City.
I'm looking for Morgan Newby. Does she live here by any chance?
She's not here.
I left a note. The next day, Morgan called and agreed to a phone interview. She postponed the interview multiple times. First, she said she needed to speak to her attorney. Then she told me she didn't know who she owed money to. And she also said her child was sick. After initially talking to her for more than a week, she stopped talking to me as well. Out of all of the vendors that we've spoken with, only one has successfully been able to sue and get a judgment against Morgan. They didn't want to go on camera. They tell me they don't believe they will ever see the money that they are entitled to, and they just want to move on with life. Lindsay tells me she too is in the process of going to small claims court, and vendors in St. Louis have now come forward saying they too were hired for a wedding that never was in 2022. But in the end, someone did get married. As they stood on the beach, flowers, cake, and camera ready, Lindsay posted online she was giving away a wedding for free to anyone who could make it in time. And the wedding planned for Morgan went to another couple on August 18th. Here's Bailey's pictures of them on their own big day.
They got all the photos and all the flowers. And luckily, we had made a reservation for Morgan at Chalbella the salon. So when she didn't show up for that appointment, my new bride Jade had hair and makeup to be done. There was an opening for her. It was like they just walked into what they deserved.
You'll notice I haven't talked about any of the men. It was only Morgan's signature on these contracts. Some of the vendors told me after all of this, they reached out to at least one of the men Morgan was dating. He had no idea about all of this planning and charges for services. As for why she does this, everyone simply said they have no idea. Covering news that matters, I'm Rick Marin on Fox 23 News.